to imagine all life as you know it stopping instantaneously and every molecule in your body exploding at the speed of light.
Total Protonic Reversal.
Protonic Reversal.
Protonic Reversal with your host, Conan Neutron. Broadcasting from a secret underground lair in Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
A gigantic middle finger to everything that is rotten about music, rock and roll, and corporate power.
The thing is, though, if you don't laugh, you're going to go on a killing spree with sharpened nails.
Confidence of a hero or a fool. I wasn't exactly certain which.
Could not be more professional.
It's only one I choose to devote my life to. That's okay.
It means something. It means something.
And take that away.
You know, that's my take on it. What's yours?
Protonic Reversal!
That's like a science thing, right?
Indeed, indeed, indeed. It is a science thing. It is a science place. It is a scientific fact that we are all up in your face. It is time for the one, the only Protonic Reversal. And welcome to it. Today we have two very special guests, both of which have appeared on the show before, but this is a joint appearance. I feel like this is something that's been kind of a long time coming. I don't know why I didn't think of this before. But we have Rick and Rose from Posterchildren, Radio Zero, Salaryman, and so many others. Rick, Rose, welcome back to the show.
Thank you.
Thanks
collectively.
for having
Yeah.
Rose, I think you've only been on the one time, but Rick...
That was enough.
No, there's never enough Rose Marshack.
Yeah.
How much can you say about bass playing?
Exactly.
It's just E, right? Remember that Kids in the Hall sketch?
You follow the guitar player, right?
Right.
Basically play the written note of the guitar chord.
Thinking, what song were we listening to? And I was like, I ripped off every bass part from that song. What song was it? It wasn't a tar song.
Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band.
God. Asshole. Can I swear?
Well, yeah, I think that either way that ship has sailed at this point, but yes, you can.
Okay.
Thank you so much for coming back to the show. It's always a pleasure to have you on. What I mentioned earlier when we were setting this up was that you're a guest that it's very easy to speak to you about almost any topic, and what you get out of it is very interesting and unique and cool. So because of that, what I had realized is that I'd kind of given short shrift to the actual music and talking about the records, and that's a wasted opportunity, frankly, because the reason why I know you guys at all is because of the music. Specifically, a friend of mine from work gave me a Tool of the Man record right after that came out as a... He lent it to me because I was wearing a Six Finger Satellite t-shirt. And he's like, oh, Six Finger Satellite. Yeah, I think they're like friends with Posterchildren. I'm like, who? And he lent me the CD, not even a record. It was a CD. Like, I need to be appropriate to the times. And thus led my long-term love affair with your band music and creative output. So that's a story about me and a t-shirt that I had. And I think it's a good one. But take it back. Take it back all the way. The first record. And just while let me do an acknowledgement real quick that without Radio Zero, there would probably be no Protonic Reversal. So thank you again for that. I don't think you guys get enough acknowledgement for being basically the first podcast.
Thank you.
Thanks.
So, yeah, I'm just going to keep saying things to you, and your response is going to be one word. So,
yeah, this is going to be great. You just compliment us for an hour.
Yeah, it's awesome.
We'll acknowledge
You
it.
got to go,
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Been listening. Do you listen to Adam Buxton's podcast?
No.
There's a thing where he does an ad, but he says he has some. He does another character who does the announcement of the ad, and he says as the kind of male character says, and I'm just going to make strange noises in the background. So the one person says something, and then he goes, It's reminding me of what we're doing right now. We're just making noises.
It's great. I get to have guests on. They talk over them and don't let them speak. It's wonderful.
Talk about Six Finger Satellite and that time we went to see the shuttle launch with them, or we could talk about what was the thing you like.
He wants to talk about the music, though.
I do want to talk about the music, but let's be clear. One of the things that is very enjoyable about what you guys do is that there are lots of digressions, and the digressions are generally interesting, and maybe more interesting when you know the players involved. But the digressions are part of the show and part of the character of the show, and that's something that I always have kind of taken to heart, especially when people who have ideas about what a podcast should or should not be, like the rules of podcasting, if you will. And
when you said show, you meant the podcast, not just the kind of general Rick and Rose show.
The Rick and Rose show.
The general theme of our lives.
It's our anniversary today.
Yeah.
Is it really? Happy anniversary. Yep. That's wonderful. So talk to me about the first record. Talk to me about, well, I guess we could talk a little bit about the demo if you want, but specifically I was going to dive right into
Which
it.
demo? Oh, Toreador Squad.
Yeah.
It was not a demo. It was a cassette release. There was a cassette label in Champaign run by Jim Sluzeric, now known as Jim McGuinn, and
Trash Can Record. Sorry.
Chris Corpora. And so they were two guys. Jim worked at the college radio station at the time and is still in radio. I think he's the programming director for The Current.
Yeah.
And Chris was booking shows in town, so he was the one who brought a large number of these really cool bands in the early days. And so they started a record label, which at the time, because you couldn't afford to make records, it was just as expensive as it is now. So people, but
wildly different environment, but somehow the same result.
So we released a cassette, and they released 5 or 10 cassettes, a couple of great compilations of the Champaign music scene at the time, and so that was the initial release, and it's got a lot of the songs that are on Flower Plower,
our first record.
Yeah, but the versions on Toreador Squad were recorded in the attic of the house I was living in.
Right, and that's 89. Does that seem about right?
Feels like 88 is more correct.
Okay, but Flower Plower was definitely 89, and there were some songs.
So Flower Plower is weird because we recorded. Then after we did that cassette, then we recorded a full album with Ian Burgess with our first drummer, Shannon. So we recorded 15 songs at Chicago Recording Company with Ian Burgess one weekend.
How did we pay for that?
You paid for it.
Oh,
Rose paid for it. So Rose had gotten a job.
Computer programming money, right?
Gotcha. Okay.
So it was before I worked there, I think, and you had money for some reason. I can't remember why.
I think it was my job.
Yeah, I think you had gotten a job and weren't at college
what
anymore.
What year was it? 1980?
I think the summer of 88, we recorded 15 songs with Ian Burgess with Shannon. And then the problem, again, is that making the record, so we recorded it, but we didn't have enough money to put it out. And then Mike Potential, who was a guy, he
was at a show, right?
Yeah, he saw us. I'm trying to remember what he was doing. This is terrible. I think he worked at a record store, but he was doing other stuff. But he was starting a label, and he really liked us. But by the time he saw us, we already had a new drummer, which was Brendan, and we had a few new songs.
Right.
And so it was like, well, we have this 15-song record done. And he's like, yeah, I like it, but I like these new songs too, and I like the new drummer. And so we went to Albini's house, and he was cheaper than Ian at the time because, to work at Steve's house was cheap. And so we had enough money. I have the receipt somewhere. It was like $250 or something. We recorded 5 songs with Steve.
In his basement.
Yeah. And
the Steve in this case would be Steve Albini, of course.
Yeah.
Steve Albini. And then we put 4 of the songs that we recorded with Steve with 4 of the songs that we recorded with Ian. And put them together as it wasn't an EP either. Mike was very specific about that. You've got to stop calling it an EP. It was a mini LP. So there was a distinction. So an EP was 6 songs or less. A mini LP was 8 songs. So we had a mini LP. Flower Plower initially came out on vinyl as mini LP.
Now that's interesting because the definition of that, I've heard multiple definitions. I've heard the 32-minute mark being used as a definitional thing. That if it's under 32 minutes, it's an EP, which seems aggressive to me. And also, if you're Godspeed You Black Emperor, it's 1 song. If you're the Minutemen, it's like 30. So a little reductive. But So it's considered a mini LP then. But then
like
also. Go ahead.
Early SST releases that were EPs, right? You'd have a Minutemen EP on a 7-inch record because they could fit 6 songs onto one 7-inch.
I know I promised to keep you guys on track, but I'm just going to say at a DJ night that I used to do, I used to play Moby Dick by Led Zeppelin, which has like the long drum break, right? And I would play a Minutemen EP during the drum break, to me that was funny. That was hilarious. It wasn't because I really wanted to play Moby Dick. I was just like, oh, check out me being a dick here. This is great.
Right.
Do you remember why we recorded with Ian Burgess and Steve Albini and how we even found them? There was no internet at that time.
So the Digits had recorded Fizz Job with Ian.
From our town, the Digits.
No, they recorded Hey Juicer with Ian too, right? Yeah. And then they recorded, that's right. And then they recorded, I love the single, the One Dead Hippie single. And I'm sure I like it. It sounds like Steve recorded it when he was still setting up the studio. It sounds like a train wreck, but it's the most amazing. It does not sound like a characteristic kind of clean, loud Albini production. It sounds like I've set this 8-track recording studio up in my house and let's try to record the Digits single. And so the Digits who by then had moved to Champaign, or at least Rick had. I think most of them were living in Champaign, had moved from Mattoon, and so they had recorded with Ian, so we were able to get into contact with Ian because of the Digits, and then the same thing with Steve. It was like, here's Steve's number, he'll record you. Yeah.
And it was just you got the number and you just rang him up and be like, hey, we're this band and we would like to record this record. Like that was
Yep.
Okay. It's probably not. I mean, you could still probably do that today, I'm sure, and
Oh yeah.
maybe the mechanisms have changed a little bit, but
yeah.
You think about life before the internet. Sometimes it's really, wow, how did we find that?
We may have written him a letter.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
No, I feel like
I think we called.
We had like a sheet of paper from Rick Digit with the phone number.
Yeah. No, that's how you did everything. Mm-hmm. I have a few amazing things. Chris Corper, who booked us and then, kind of coordinated all. It was basically kind of our manager and booking agent at the very beginning. I still have stuff where it's just all paper based, like calendars and.
Did you ever have like the day planner with the tour information and the and the contacts and things along those lines?
Kind of. We always had our booking agents would send us large
portfolio.
We always had a clipboard.
Yeah,
you had the clipboard. Was our
where's the clipboard?
It's in the attic somewhere.
No. I remember saying, "Where's the clipboard?"
Yeah, it's still around though. The 30-year-old clipboard.
Well, okay. So before we go too much further forward, I do want to talk about the early days of Posterchildren because you guys had a very defined and specific sound that. It was aggressive, but it was poppy. It was certainly coming from a more like academic place maybe than other bands, but it wasn't something where it was necessarily full on, oh, we play art rock either. And because of that, did you feel when Posterchildren were starting up that there were a lot of like-minded bands around? Because you had a pretty active scene at that moment in time. Champaign and whatnot, right? But did you feel like there were a lot of fellow travelers for Posterchildren when you first started up?
I felt like we fit in with the kind of Midwest scene. I mean, if you think of 13 Nightmares and then
House of Large Sizes.
There were certain bands regionally that felt similar. Full Fathom 5 in Iowa City. I mean, we played early shows with them, and I really liked them. I think we found out about them because of my brother was in Ames, Iowa for a while, so he knew a lot of local Iowa music too, and then Chicago music. So it was. I think that's where we kind of fit in. I'm trying to think of what else. Weird material issue in a weird way. Maybe more of a how to do it way. So because Jim Ellison was so plugged in,
right?
Was a salesman too. Like we talk about this. We have 2 copies.
Sure.
Of their first EP, right? Even though I think we were already living together.
Yeah.
I mean, he could sell.
Come on, you need another.
He sold you 2 copies.
I think we have a vinyl and a cassette one. It's like, how are you going to listen to it in the car? And it's
that's a good point. I didn't think about
but
that.
then also booking batteries not included. So this thing, you'd see him and talk to him in Champaign,
Right.
when he played a show, and then you'd see him. He'd book you at Batteries Not Included, and you'd see him there. And so it's starting those kind of things. To me, it was more being part of the community. It wasn't as much about a sound as a philosophy, because that was also the thing. Is I think a lot of us were in like sort of influenced by the SST and Homestead scenes or bands or whatever, and those were pretty varied still, those artists.
There wasn't like a uniform sound necessarily or anything along those lines. It kind of just seemed like the correlating factor was like, oh, all these bands are pretty interesting.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about Husker Du, the Minutemen, and the Meat Puppets, you would never, like now, if you ran a label, well, that now it doesn't make any sense. Like maybe, but you know what I mean.
You could get a bunch of money, throw it in the backyard, put it in a pile, and set it on fire, and you'd probably have just as much of a profitable endeavor. But that idea of having a sound, right? And it wasn't that. It was more about the philosophy, and everybody was. It was
the
punk
DIY,
was
the DIY, yeah.
It had sort of solidified, and been codified. Right. And then all of a sudden it was unraveling again. And so I think that was what was important is that, we're all sort of in this together and we're part of this underground scene, but the rules have changed. And, and the replacements, it seems maybe passe, but at the time, you think about Let It Be, that record is all over the place. And all the early replacements records are all over the place, like even within a record. Right. And so that was the thing is it wasn't as much sound alignment as philosophical alignment and scene alignment, and just the fact that these are the 20 people that are going to show up at your show in this town are the people who are in these bands.
Right. So there's a rich community. There's a bunch of people that are also kind of following their own star charts through the seas. And by the same token, even though there isn't anyone that necessarily is a sound-alike for what Posterchildren was doing at the time, there's a lot of bands that you felt a kinship with and you felt community with. Would you say that's accurate?
Yeah.
Okay, so then picking back up, first record, or I guess mini LP. I mean, you did do a CD reissue of that has a...
Yeah, that's the thing is once the CD happened, so Mike sold the record to Frontier. And then by then the CD era had happened. And in 1989, when Flower Flower actually came out, there was, I don't even think, maybe there were CDs, but nobody.
It was not the thing. It was not the primary thing in any way, shape, or form. It was.
So by the time, Frontier reissued it. It was like, we need a CD. We need to put it on cassette and CD, and it needs to have more than 8 tracks. And so it was like, well, we got 7 more. So,
and that was right at the dawn of the you can fit how much music on these, which led to a very unfortunate trend of just this record's great. When's it going to be over? I have things to do.
Yeah, and it also skews Flower Flower on CD. It's not 2 years kind of evenly on one side A and side B. It becomes really heavily weighted to the early stuff with Shannon, which is not bad, but it definitely was not like that. It was this kind of like 2 sides of Posterchildren, 2 drummers, 1 on each side.
Yeah.
You remember? Oh, sorry.
No, Rose, please. I was actually going to encourage you to speak. So.
Steve Albini called up a couple of years after Flower Flower came out and said, hello, hi Steve, what's up? I just noticed the second L. It was like a couple of years. Like,
so he thought it was Flower Power for
forever. Yeah. I remember how much that used to upset me, but he probably thought it was, antagonistic to hippies anyway. He probably didn't think we were hippies because it was all black and white.
No, he made comments that were approving. I mean, that was one of the things as he said, I like you guys. You don't have any love songs. And so
right.
That was the genesis of our song Love was actually a direct response to that, where it was like, okay, well, I'm going to be contrarian now.
Yeah, there you go. So you think Steve Albini, I'll show you.
Yeah, but in a very positive.
Of course, yeah.
Kind of a negative song.
Loving way.
Yeah. I think that song's negative, right? It's kind of negative.
Yeah, I'm in heaven, I'm in hell. What's the difference? I can't tell. Happy anniversary, asshole.
was gonna say, you didn't. When you agreed to do this, you didn't tell me it was going to be your anniversary. I would have picked another day, but
I didn't know until this morning.
I knew. I thought it would be fun.
Well, it is. I suppose somewhat fitting that for two very creative folks that have been locked in together creatively as well as in other ways to be doing something along those lines is kind of poetic, I suppose.
The anniversary of Grand Bargain too. So.
That's true. We put out Grand Bargain on our anniversary.
Which normally I play a song beforehand, and I would have played the title track off Grand Bargain, which I like quite a bit. But there's something kind of weird about having people looking at you, like waiting, that like makes me be like, I want to respect and value your time, and also apparently blow out your eardrums, which was apologies for that. So we'll play some songs later on in the show, but yeah, great album, and we'll get to that later. But right now we're finishing up with Flower Flower and getting into Daisy Chain Reaction. So, talk to me about the change up there. You did Daisy Chain Reaction at Chicago Recording Company, right? That was also with Steve?
It was more complicated than that. We did demos at Steve's house in the spring with the idea we needed to do demos, and then we were trying to get we were going to record it at Smart.
Oh,
with
yeah.
Butch Vig, and we sent Butch Vig the demos, and he said, "Why are you record? Why do you want to record this again? They sound pretty good. why do you want me to do this?
Right?
And why did we want him to do it?
Which is a polite way of saying I don't want to record you. I think maybe I'll."
Why did we want to record with Butch Vig anyway?
So this is the Mike Potential thing. So Mike Potential was a super huge De Kreutzen fan. We had heard the Killdozer stuff, and so Mike Potential is an unsung hero. Well, maybe, but he also put out Smashing Pumpkins' first single, and he was in Chicago constantly. Early days talking to them, and so anytime around that time. Talking to Mike Potential, he would say, everybody's got to record with Butch Vig. Listen to this record. This sounds great, and all this kind of stuff.
Right.
And so he's responsible for the Pumpkins thing, I would say, for them being aware of. I'm just going to say it. Yeah, I'm sure. That's why we're aware of Butch Vig and Smart Studios. And so that was part of it. And then somehow Steve got wind of that. And so when we were recording Daisy Chain Reaction at Chicago Recording Company again, so the same place we would record it with Ian, his comment about Butch was like, "There's a lot of reverb on that," and so Steve was a little more. It seemed like he was. Not that he doesn't have reverb on his recording, but he wasn't putting artificial reverb on the recordings. I think he opened up when he was recording us at Chicago Recording Company. His approach was to say, "Well, they like something about what Butch is doing. I'm going to put a little more reverb or room sound in there." Again,
yeah, not artificial, not full on Bauhaus necessarily, but getting the character of the room.
If you've been in both studios like I have, the original Smart Studios at the Chicago Recording Company, I know most people have been to both places.
You should be pushing your glasses up on your nose while you
professional. Well, no, yeah. The difference is that the original Smart was like we're kind of recording like the size of the live room was bigger than Steve's house, but comparatively speaking, for a professional studio, Smart Studios did not have a large live room, and it wasn't live sounding. Chicago Recording Company, you were recording on the weekends, and it was a high end studio during the week where they were doing commercial gigs and everything like that, and it's a huge
bigger
open
bands and things like that.
Space. Beautiful space, yeah.
Well, and I also want to make one clarification that at the time of we're talking about with Butch Vig and Smart, he's more known for doing Killdozer too, and and De Kreutzen and things like that. He wasn't the guy from Garbage yet.
Nope.
It was years before. I mean, that would have been Gish, I guess. Right?
When we get to Daisy Chain, or when we get to Junior Citizen, we can talk about Garbage.
Sure. So Daisy Chain Reaction. That's Twin Tone,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, that's right.
And it was reissued
On Sire.
On Sire, right?
Later.
Okay.
Yeah. So Twin Tone, the whole, if you know the history of music distribution, as I'm sure you all know the history of music distribution, I'm talking like a...
But believe me, if they're listening to this show, they probably have a pretty good idea. What I realized I need to do, though, is like make prefacing statements like I just made that was basically like, yeah, Butch Vig didn't always used to be in garbage and didn't used to be known
good
for the Foo Fighters. And so
he was building a regional reputation because of the Killdozer stuff, right? It was really what, and then for people who like Die Kreuzen too, right? It was those records. That was what he was known for. So he was the other Midwest guy doing weird punk rock, post-punk bands. What was I going to say before I was rudely interrupted?
Daisy Chain Reaction.
Yeah, Twin Tone.
Twin Tone, Daisy Chain Reaction.
Our booking agent was working out of the Twin Tone offices. She wasn't directly affiliated. She just rented a room and a phone, right? And so she was based in Minneapolis at the time. And so we were traveling up there a lot, and we
kept coming up there and playing for $50. I remember, and getting home in time. Like drive home
the same night. Ooh.
yeah, and get home in time to take a shower and go to work. Right? Remember that? The Sunday nights in Minneapolis.
Minneapolis.
You'd drive home, we'd take a shower, or sometimes we wouldn't even take a shower. We'd just go straight to work, start programming computers.
Which is something you can kind of get away with when you're a
programming computers.
They're
right, yeah.
Quirky.
Almost. Right?
Yeah, so we signed a 3-record contract with Twin Tone because Twin Tone was like a great Midwestern label.
Yeah, who was on it that made us?
Well, the Replacements had just left, but Soul Asylum was on there. Babes in Toyland were on there. Ween, around the same time was on Twin Tone. I think we both signed to Twin Tone around the same time. But then, so Twin Tone paid for their record, and then Rough Trade, their distribution company, blew up. And I mean, in the old terminology of blew up. It fell apart, imploded. Rumor had it was because of the Butthole Surfers contract they had signed. Butthole Surfers, I can't remember what record it was, but some
$100,000.
But it was also the parent company. This is indie rock history. People talk about the Rough Trade collapse.
Yeah, that's a pretty big.
Yeah,
we don't need to eat up too much time of wanting to talk Poster Children, getting into that. If you're interested in that, there's there's books that have been written about stuff like this, right? So you can.
Well, what do you want to know about
TFM?
What do you want to know about? So the thing is about Daisy Chain Reaction is we recorded demos with Steve.
Yeah.
And then in the summer we recorded a full length record, and then we listened.
With Bob, right? Bob's on drums.
Bob was on drums, yes, and Jeff on guitar. So that's still Jeff. Jeff had joined. We had a drummer in between there, Mike, who we wrote some songs with, but he's not on any of our records. And then what happened? Oh, yeah, we listened back, and so some of the stuff we did with Steve in his house sounded better. Like If You CK, the version of If You CK on that record is the house is done at Steve's house. So that's what's interesting is it's in the liner notes, but I can never figure it out. But there are some versions that were done in the big studio, but some songs that we did at Steve's house as demos wound up being on the record itself because they sounded better, which is a tribute to Steve,
Yeah, and that's he's obviously got a very uncanny ability for being able to capture an excellent live band being an excellent live band, which is
even in a
nice.
Tiny
no matter the room.
yeah.
Okay, so then you've got and this record, you've got there's a video for If You CK, which ended up doing some stuff. It was something where, by the way, it took me like 3 years before I finally was like, oh, If You CK.
Yeah,
I'm usually pretty good with the wordplay, but on that one, I was definitely behind the curve there.
And what I should say is so the reason why I brought up the Rough Trade thing is that we recorded Daisy Chain Reaction in 1990, and it sat idle for a year. It did not come out for a year.
Right.
And so we got the record in the can. It was supposed to come out in fall of 1990 and didn't come out until fall of 91. And so we were in limbo, in stasis. And so part of it is timeline stuff, right? So it's like Nirvana's Nevermind came out, in the fall of 91. But it's like we had this record in the can for a year, and then Twin Tone finally got enough money together after the implosion of Rough Trade to get it out and released. Yeah,
and Posterchildren were not alone in that regard. There are other bands that were in similar situations for sure.
It's the story. I mean, it's the story of indie rock, right? It's the balance of like if the record starts doing well, and it's like, we can't press anymore because we don't have any money yet from the distributor, and so it was a common story from almost everyone. It was like getting your record out and then keeping it in stock if people wanted to buy it. Which is a good problem to have in some ways, but it's also a bad problem to have when it's kind of like, nobody can buy the record and people are telling them it's a great record.
Yeah. So, and there's a lot of places to go with that. Real quick, Rose, when did you start keeping the tour journals? Was that a little bit later, or at least publicly putting them up anyway?
It's funny. Well, 1995, because that's, I think, right? That's when PrairieNet.
Well, that's when you did it online, but you were doing it earlier.
I have tour journals from 1993. I have tour journals from the Screaming Trees tour.
Funny you mentioned that, yeah.
Yeah, it is funny that I mentioned that. I have all this writing about, because I remember too, like over the past however many years, I was thinking, I could have sworn I wrote about, what year was this tour? Because I could have sworn I wrote about it. I remember writing about this stuff. I remember reading my writing about it. And then, I just found a 1993 onward tour reports. So, but they went online in 1995.
And for my recollection, there wasn't really a lot of people doing that at the time. It was pretty much you and Mike Watt. And I don't even remember that was, that I'd have to reconcile the timeline, Steve, and say when I first remember that being. But I remember it was very interesting that from a perspective of somebody who was not at that point really in doing any music of note, let alone touring, like the idea that I could get a window into this world of this band that actually was doing it, this band I liked that was the listener by proxy, because I felt like you always had a very relaxed tone with how you described it, and you described it with great enthusiasm. It was something that was very formative for me and quite a few other people, just to be able to read those experiences. And again, for the younger listeners, this is before everybody had a Facebook and an Instagram and Instagram TV and Snapchat and TikTok and all this. It was a wildly different world, yeah.
Beginning years of HTML, so at your house you wouldn't be able to see the pictures from the web. You would have needed a high speed line to see that, and people at their houses had dial-ups and stuff.
Yeah,
so
exactly. It would be like, hey, let's go over to Steve's house. He's got a 14.4 modem.
Yeah.
Oh my God, I can't believe this picture is downloading so quickly. I can't wait to look at it.
So when we were on tour, we would ask, I'd be like, we'd ask, please, does anybody have a floor we could sleep on? And I remember thinking, let's pick the people who look like they have a phone line that we can use. Let's make sure that, I remember after a while asking, do you have internet access?
I remember, early on when occasionally we'd get hotel rooms and stuff, or motel rooms, and you'd be trying to talk to them about, well, what kind of phone jack do you have? Because some hotels, motels, Motel 6s especially, right, would have the wired phone jack, right?
Yeah.
Right.
And so it was like, we can't.
You need to be able to unplug the jack from the phone.
We need
in order to plug it into the computer modem.
Yeah. And they're like, what? And then of course, you might as well be trying to explain a card trick to a dog. They don't know nothing about it. They don't want to know anything about it. Like, what do you just... Yeah. Come on. Continental breakfast is at 8.
Motel 6 managers are already suspicious of everyone.
I
right?
know.
Right,
We're
exactly.
like, we're a rock band too. We didn't look like
Why are they
morally
asking about the phone
upstanding.
line? It's got to be something illegal.
Drugs. Yeah.
It's something nefarious, and it will come to no good.
They're up to no good, and I'm going to wind up with the cops at my Motel 6 again.
Yeah, exactly. And that's probably their primary concern. They're probably not that far off base, really. Okay, so that's developing. It's still a little while before that comes. Anything more on Daisy Chain Reaction that you want to speak to?
You ask us what you want to know about it.
Well, okay. I briefly mentioned the video for FUCK, which was a single in an era where, when the record actually can see the light of day, there was a lot of stuff happening around that time. That was the year punk broke, right? I saw that documentary.
Yeah, and 120 minutes, which was
actually a cool thing. Like, you could see bands that were not the corporate approved bands at that time. They let the weirdos in for a minute.
You're right. Back when MTV showed music videos, and then they had a 2 hours on Sunday nights, the dead time, where they'd show alternative underground music videos, and we got on that show, and that was a huge thing.
Do you remember the single? The single wasn't going to be FUCK. It was going to be Chain Reaction.
Video. We were, in fact, I think the footage at the Metro is of us playing Daisy Chain Reaction or Chain Reaction, and then Bill. What's Bill's name?
Bill Ward.
Bill Ward. Sorry, I'm friends with him on Facebook. He the video guy. And now I know, after doing music videos, it's like he said, you know what, we should do a video of this song, FUCK. And I was like, yeah, I guess so. And I realize now it's, 2 minutes, 30 seconds? And that's
much shorter. The other song is
short. And so it's not, I was always like, oh, he just knows the best song, and he figured out what the lead song should be on the record. But I also am now, I should talk to him about this. Is like, was it just simply like, there's no way I can make a 5-minute music video for the song. We've got to let's do one of these short songs.
Yeah.
And so, all kind of came together very quickly based around that. Then we did all the footage down in Champaign and some up in Chicago, and he put it all together. Yeah.
So what's happening, like, show-wise, tour-wise around this time? You're playing with like-minded bands, things along those lines.
Can I tell the story? Like, we went on tour, right? That was the tour supporting Daisy Chain Reaction. And we drove up. We did the like Chicago, Wisconsin, Minneapolis, and then we went around to. We went left. Yeah.
So to set the scene, so that summer, right before the record came out, it was pressed and sitting in the warehouse. And I remember we opened for Fugazi in Champaign on the summer of '91. And I remember talking to Ian and saying, yeah, I think our record's in the same warehouse as your stuff. And he was like, didn't understand. Not that he didn't understand us, like, why so? But anyways, I was like, oh, our record was finally coming out. I was really excited. And so that's the kind of stuff that was starting to happen. We were opening. We had played out east and done a 1-week tour. It played with Thin White Rope. We were opening up for cool bands in Champaign. I think we had opened up for a few cool bands in Minneapolis. Dave's in Toyland, obviously, and Chicago bands. We probably played that show with, I don't know when we played that show with Urge Overkill and the Digits, but it was around that time. So that was what was going on with us in the Midwest.
Was this the first time we went west?
So this was the first time we...
In the... Oh, okay. So we have a tape deck in the van, right? And we have the brand new Nirvana tape. Was it tape or CD?
It was a tape, and it was a boombox. It
was not.
Yeah,
right,
I don't
right,
think
right,
the tape
right,
deck was working.
Right. That's right. We had a boombox. So we got the brand new Nirvana record. It was called Nevermind, and we were listening to it. I remember, and we have videotape of ourselves listening to da-da-da, da-da-da-da-da. We were like, "This is pretty good." And then we played in Minneapolis, right? Yeah. Well, no, and also
everyone was watching it because Sonic Youth had signed to a major. It was okay, but it didn't seem like it had changed much. Like, they didn't become superstars. Husker Du had fallen apart. It seemed like. I mean, obviously now you read the biography, there's but it felt like, it was like the kiss of death. And so Nirvana, it was like the rumor was they got a pretty big amount of money, and it was like, wow, what's going to happen with this? Everyone was kind of like in the scene was kind of, it was waiting to see what would happen. Like,
we were
how
too.
are these guys going to?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No.
We were like,
everyone.
well, we'll consider signing to a major label if they are okay.
And we had already talked.
Yeah.
So we had talked to 3 majors. And so we were already frustrated with Twin Tone because of distribution problems. We loved Twin Tone, but it was like,
but I mean, it also was nice to have records too.
It's going to take another year to get a record out. We're going to have to figure something out. Yeah. So go on.
So we were
Sorry.
like going counterclockwise around the United States and played in Seattle. And I don't remember I don't remember now anymore. Like
the guy we stayed with in Seattle was the guy doing the Nirvana t-shirts, and he was starting to freak out. It was like,
he had a lot of orders.
I don't know if I can do this anymore.
And I got a broken Nirvana shirt too. Remember, he's like, well, this is a misprint. If you want it, you can have it. I was like, cool, I'll take that, because I like this band. They're pretty good.
But he was like, things are getting weird. Like he I remember him talking, and he was like, something's going on.
Yeah.
But we were being interviewed by college radio stations, right? And then they would say, "What song do you want to hear?" And I remember Bob and the tour with us. You play the Nirvana song, and they were like, "Oh yeah, it's cool. Okay, we'll play it." KCRW, were we on or something?
Okay, we were in San Francisco, I think. Yeah.
Okay, so we were San Francisco. Was that the place where they were like,
San Francisco was
they
where it
were
was.
like, where do you guys, what do you, interview? What do you guys want to hear? And I think I said, play the Nirvana song. I really like it.
Right.
And they were like, you're kidding, right? And I'm like, no, why? You don't like it? And they were like, that broke already. That's on, K-Rock and stuff. And I was like, what?
Had transcended beyond the college radio world.
Play that.
Yeah, it was like a 2-week thing. In 2 weeks, everything changed.
And by the time
of a tour, can you imagine being on tour during the pandemic?
That's
and so we got down to Texas, and that was when If You See K was on 120 Minutes. I remember sitting. We played a club to 50 people, maybe at most. Probably not. Or it was Louisiana, right?
Yeah, it was Louisiana.
Lafayette,
it was
right?
Lafayette, Louisiana.
And after the show, we watched ourselves on 120 Minutes.
Yeah.
And then by the time we got to New York, there were 15 major labels who wanted to sign us. And it was like, it was insane, basically. Everything went to hell, basically. The upside down. The whole world turned
It was
up.
the feeding frenzy at that point. It was the pigs at the trough, if you will.
We were already suspicious and very wary of major labels, and so then all of a sudden it was great having the attention, but we also knew that it was complete it was a feeding frenzy. It was not based on, like, these people did not know who we were, didn't care about us until all of a sudden it was like, everybody needs a Nirvana, everybody needs a bunch of
they
college.
wanted the next Nirvana. It wasn't based on your particular merit or your skills as a band or even as human beings. It was like, no, we need a Nirvana.
Yeah.
Which,
so it was
so you ended up going to Sire, right?
So we had already talked to the guys. So there were 3 people that we had talked to before all this, like when we had been to New York, and people who. So the guy who signed us to Sire was also the guy who signed Uncle Tupelo, right? And so he was
Joe McEwen, as we'll say. Yeah.
Yeah,
and
music journalist, Philadelphia guy, right? I remember he just was really, I'm trying to remember, you can look him up in terms of his journalism, but definitely like soul and rock and stuff like that. But like James Brown, the famous James Brown concert the day that Martin Luther King, or the day after he was assassinated.
Sure. Yeah.
Talking about watching that. He was one of those rock critic, rock journalist guys who became an A&R guy. And so we had talked to him, well before all the craziness happened. We had talked to Peter at Columbia, and then Al who signed like Jawbox, right? The guy. Yeah. So there were these guys who were already, they were just looking for underground artists that, might sell a few records more on a major label, but not not be huge.
But the thing I find very interesting is who you went with is someone that you knew had an earnest interest in the music in the band before it was before everybody could feign interest and be like, oh yeah, I've been a fan for forever. And I think that's very key and very cool and is in character for the band for sure.
I just remember you My Bloody Valentine was on Sire, and to me I love that record, and it sounded like this. I mean, it sounds like that.
Still does
like,
too.
If they put that record out, they'd probably be okay.
They would be more amenable to what you want to do, which would likely sound like polished pop compared to some of the weirder stuff. Sure.
And this was, the window was closing, but at the time it was starting to happen. But at the time there was still enough money being made. It was the crazy CD era where they were making money hand over fist, and the labels could sign artists that the people at the label liked. So It was kind of like the way you rationalized. It's the same thing as musicians, right? As somebody working at a major label, the way they would rationalize it is, yeah, I'm pushing this crap record, but at least I get to help out this band I like
that
too.
You actually like, and so you get that you had that the A&R with the personal investment, which everybody likes to claim and everybody likes to overstate, but in reality was very rare because while academically someone may be interested in something, they're going to be unable to really do that much for the band, and usually it's sort of like, hey, you're up on this shelf, you're up here with my knickknacks. Look at my awesome knickknacks up here.
Yeah, and the other thing is the Sire was part of Warner Brothers, that Warner ecosystem, and they had something called the Alternative Marketing Department, which was basically like a little tiny indie label within Warner that helped all the small fry bands. So it was a bunch of people, like 6 or 7 people who had worked at mom and pop record shops, had worked at indie distributors and everything like that. And so we wound up working with those people, and we had the huge kind of major label thing going on, but at least we always had those 5 or 6 people who were supporting our record in the same way a really sort of high functioning indie label would be. That was what they were, was like they did not have to hit massive numbers or whatever, kind of major label jargon. So that was another selling point for us, is like, oh, here are a bunch of people that it's not just A&R people, right, sign you to the label, but then after that, you're kind of all they do is say, oh, I like the record, or you should do this and that, maybe, and
you don't have as much engagement with them.
Yeah, they don't do a huge amount, especially for a band like us, where it's like, well, yeah, you could tell me not to sing that at the end of the song, but I don't mind. Sing it.
You mean the part at the end of "He's My Star"?
Yeah.
You're talking about.
Well, okay.
The reason why the ending of "He's My Star" is that, oh, you should take that up. But he had demo-itis. I don't think it was on the demo. So there's demo-itis too. People like a song in the demo form, and then if they've listened to it enough, they get married to it.
Okay, so just before we move on now to Tool the Man, where was your headspace at while this was going on? Obviously, it's a crazy time. Just to be alive in general, like culture itself was changing, but to be, if not at the vanguard, like certainly within the movement of it, and coming from the place where you were at, but then also analyzing the new information and taking it in. Where was your headspace at? What were you feeling? What were you thinking? Both of you. We
quit our jobs when we went on that tour. Right before we went on that tour, remember?
And it was not because of the prospect of a major label thing. It was because we couldn't take 6 weeks off.
Couldn't sustain it. Yeah.
So we asked for 6 weeks and they said no.
Yeah, when Daisy Chain came out, it was like, well, let's take it. We can do this full tour and come back home and get programming jobs again. That was our attitude. And then the whole Nirvana thing happened, and so we didn't have to go back to our programming jobs for a few years at least.
Yeah, for a long time.
Yeah, so it was, for us, it was just kind of like a 20-something leap. It's like, what do we got to lose? We can always go back to work. And so that was our state of mind. In terms of what was going on, I think, I don't know, we're practical. Having talked to Steve Albini again, he was very good. And for those of you who've read the article, what the problem with music, right? That's kind of just a distillation of what he would tell every band, especially when things were going or things that were going on this time is this is how major labels work and this is what's going to happen.
Yeah, we knew exactly what was going to happen. I mean, we were very, very level-headed about it. When we got our money, we bought computers and recording equipment with it. I don't think we ever expected to be. It never in my wildest dreams did I expect to be like famous or.
And there were a few other bands, like we had seen bands that were, so there were bands that were playing the indie rock circuit, but were on majors, right, before the Nirvana thing happened, and even after, right, obviously, but in tour buses. And so I just remember, what is it, Psychofunkapus was the band?
Oh.
Probably the first Psychofunkapus reference on Protonic Reversal.
Right. But what I remember about it is I basically was asking them accounting questions, like how much that bus costs every it's $250 a night. And it's like, how much are you getting paid? $250 a night. And so it's like, I'm doing the math and it's like, okay, we can't do that. Like we could take, and then, the explanation about tour support. So it was just that we were lucky enough to ask questions, to be educated, to be, have Steve was a great resource, but also the problem is that when someone like Steve Albini or someone like Ian Mackay tell you how the music business works, that it's also kind of like saying, this is how to live life like a unicorn. You can be a unicorn too. And it's like, okay. So I think learning requires synthesis and understanding who you are too, right? It's so the thing is
you
that
can't slot yourself into a pre-existing thing, right?
And so I think some people
not one size fits all that way.
So just in the same way people fell into the rock and roll ideas, like, oh, we're on a major label, we got to be on a tour bus. Other people said, we're not going to sign to a major label because we're going to get screwed, right? And so for us, it was like, we have a twin tone contract we can't get out of. Are we going to put out 2 more records on this label that can't put records out? Right. And things
usually the first thing you think of when you
we had to label. Yeah, someone to buy us out of this. And so for us, it was like, okay, Sire Records, that's a label that put out so many of my favorite records, right? And so it's like, and some of the people are still there. We got to talk to Seymour Stein, it had all sorts of problems, but it was also like, hey, this is where you go. And the replacements, were doing okay. They made that jump to Siren, and then you just, and it's like, okay, but don't fall into the rock star stuff and don't fall into debt and don't do all this stupid stuff. If you're not making enough money, you don't have enough fans to afford a bus, and you just take the money and get the bus, at some point that's going to go away, because we knew that story. Now you hear behind the music and you have all those documentaries, but if you weren't a student, and this is what I should say about Champaign, is so Champaign has had lots of amazing bands from the 60s through, like Irving Azoff, not a band, but like one of the kings of major label Nightmare Kings, was from Champaign, like started out in Champaign, managed REO Speedwagon and Dan Fogelberg, and so there were people like
rich history there,
had come out of that scene and gotten rich and famous. But then there are 10 or 15 years of people who we saw and were still in bands, were working at record stores, who had gotten those big major label breaks and then bought a car, right? And that's the story. Is like,
went on tour. The Screams didn't they? They made it. They went on tour.
Screams,
to like they were in England or something, and then the tour support fell through. Something, or they got dropped. Right, they got dropped
while they were in London.
They were in London. They had to come home.
And they had to find money to get themselves home. Stories like that.
So it's so terrible.
The Elvis Brothers. So the Elvis Brothers, Brad. Brad, was in Screams, right? But so they had done sort of well, but then things had fallen apart for them, and so there was The Last Gentleman, which was this great synth pop act, had huge struggles with trying. They should have been, kind of like the American Depeche Mode, but somehow everything got messed up. So for us, we were not only getting this indie rock thing, we were also getting this. Okay, so there's that idea of getting signed to a major label and you get all this stuff, but it's like there's so many potholes in that road, and there were a lot of people around the Champaign scene that knew, talked about it or didn't talk about it, or you heard about it. So we had that, and we were able to synthesize all that information. It was like, okay, we've got to keep our heads about this, and we got to be realistic. It's like, yeah, maybe we could have a popular song, but the way we would have a popular song is if it accidentally fell out of us. I've talked to so many musicians, and one specific one, it was just like, they say we need a hit and we got to write it. And I'm just like, I think you should just make your record and hope for the best, because you're gonna totally mess yourself up. And somebody like the Smashing Pumpkins, so you have a band like the Smashing Pumpkins who are kind of a little later than us, but moved up and went astronomical. But I remember seeing them when they opened for us in Champaign, and it was like they already had roadies and they were setting it up, and
they had all the trappings, they had all the
yeah. And also the way they approached the business side and the management company and everything like that. It was like, okay, they're operating on this different level and this different mentality, but also they're making music that's the exact music that they want to make, or he wants to make. Let's call this.
Yeah, let's call it what it is, right?
and it's resonating, whether or not you think Billy Corgan's a genius. My perspective is no, he wrote the exact music he wanted to write at that time, and it was exactly the right place, right time, and then the right machine behind him.
Right.
And so to get into this headspace where you're going to make music that's going to be something that you're not is impossible. That's a very long answer, but it's kind of an overarching.
No, but it makes sense. It ties into some other things, what I was sort of leading you towards anyway, which is to say that with that background and with those ideas behind that, and being able to come into things with critical thinking skills, and to be able to say, oh, let's make sure that we take a path where we can keep this sustainable.
Right. That everything that we ever did was every decision that we ever made was to make the band more sustainable. It was like to give us the longest life
longevity
possible.
And so
every decision.
The arc, the
so
arc.
You don't get to be in the tour bus, but you also get to not have to spend that money, and you can use that money for other things to keep things sustainable and keep the ship moving too.
Exactly.
And so the next record, Tula Man, when we were on that Screaming Trees tour, it was like talking to, I think it was Van, one of the brothers, was like, "Oh no, we're going back to work after this," and they had the bus and everything, and they had sold 200,000 records, and it was just like, okay. I don't want to do that. I want to be able to go home to Champaign after my tour and write more music. I don't want to have to work at a restaurant at the same time. And so it was economics. It was practicality. Yeah, and it was just practicality. It was like, why not? Why do I need these trappings? Because when I get home, I want to be able to work on music. I want someone to call up and say, "Hey, do you guys want to go on this 6-week tour?" And say, "Yeah." Instead of, "Oh no, I can't quit my job right now."
Yeah. Right. Instead of having the trappings of ordinary life sort of locking you in.
So we were poor, but not broke.
Right.
Right. Whereas
you chose to use your resources in such a way to provide sustainability for the things that were important to you.
And so the other way to go is to look like you're doing really well. Like you roll up to the show in a bus, right? And you look like you're doing really well, but then you go home and you're broke.
You have to get a job.
So I would rather, just show up in the van.
And we slept on so many floors. Yeah. I mean, I slept on hardwood floors, and I liked it. But now, and I've been somewhere just recently where I had to sleep on the floor, and I was like, oh, I can do that. And I kind of I like knowing that I don't need that much,
It is a good experience. I mean, I don't have problems going into disgusting bathrooms when I'm traveling. Not that
It is a certain skill set that you learn, for sure.
Roughing it.
Yeah.
And you know what? Frickin' sitting in a van with 5 people, 4 people, 5 people for 6 weeks. That's war training for where we're at right now. I mean, that's really, we know how to kind of deal with each other. We know how to deal with our children being cooped up in the house because we were in a box for months on end with 4 children ourselves, and
yeah, like I had Billy Gould from Faith No More and whatnot on the show, and that was like really early on with the quarantine, and I was like, how are you holding up? And he's like, well, I was telling my kids, you've got Netflix, you've got like the internet, you got all this stuff. This is way easier than just even being on tour. At least you have room to move around.
Yeah.
And I was like, you know what? That's a really good point. Like, because you come to take all the modern amenities that we are provided in life right now and sort of take that as like a given and take it for granted. Speaking personally, the first U.S. tour I ever did, we didn't even have a stereo. Like, period. And like, I was like, how did we do that? And we just talked to each other, I guess.
Well, for most, I don't know what first tour, but I think we probably learned from our first tour is that we never had music in the van after that first tour.
Oh, yeah.
Because that's the way an argument starts.
Yeah.
See, that's why you used to have a rule.
No days off either.
Yeah, days off, pillars. Yeah,
that's the Wattism, right? If you're not playing, you're paying.
Yeah, for us, it was more like you're just looking at each
kill
other.
Each other.
Yeah, ready to rip someone's gut.
A little more serious. So, okay, so with that leads us to Tool of the Man. So that's the one. That's the one that there's a lot of things I could say after that's the one. That's the one where I came in. Is what I was going to say. I'm not sure if it were, but that's also the one that's got the. It's like the what do you call the type of the album cover? What do you call that manner of art?
Yeah, well, like op art? No, but it's
But
like
illusion.
It's an optical illusion.
Thing on the inside. Yeah.
The 3D stereogram. Is that what it was called?
Magic Eye.
It's stereogram. I think it was called.
Magic Eye.
I think Magic Eye is like the Frisbee to that, where it's like that's actually a brand name, but they've.
Yeah. I think it's a stereogram.
Nobody cared enough to learn what the actual thing was. Like, no one calls it a flying disc, right? They just call it a Frisbee, which same deal with Magic Eye, I think. Anyway, so the point of fact is that there's this optical illusion style art for this record, Tool of the Man. This is Johnny. This is John on drums for this one, right? At this point?
I read that his name is Spider.
That's right. I forgot about that. Some people called him Spider. I totally forgot about that. He must, because he had a spider tattoo.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was called Johnny Machine at the time, but he's now known as John Herndon.
So,
question?
Yeah. So the question with that is, well, first of all, the name of the record is Tool of the Man. And that was meant to be sort of like a play on words with the sellout argument that was happening at the time, or what?
But he wrote that. Somebody wrote it in the dust on our van, right?
Yeah, I think it's Southwick.
Really? No, something, and then Tool of the Man.
Posterchildren, Band of the Year, Tool of the Man.
Right.
So we love that. That was when I was grabbing. Yeah, I still do, but yeah, just stuff I saw. So. What was it also in Johnny's hometown, Asheville? Oh,
yeah.
One of his hometowns, Asheville, North Carolina, was where good energy rules with an iron fist was spray painted on the wall. Graffiti, always a good source of lyrics for us.
It's the original proletariat poetry.
Yeah, exactly.
So talk to me about the recording of that first. So the recording of that record... This comes out on Sire, right?
Just say you forgot, Rick. Yeah, he's looking at me. He's not happy. We hated recording that.
I have a problem with that. I do not like that record. So
yeah,
and I know people
why.
love.
Why don't you like that record?
It's the entry point for a lot of people, and it's a lot of people's favorite record. So it's bad for me to say this.
Well, so what do you feel? Let's put it this way: what do you feel like? Doesn't give you like the feeling that you want from a good recording from there? Like what is something you would like to see improved if you were in the situation to do so?
I think we should have re-recorded it. I think we took the money and ran. So basically, if you didn't spend your whole budget, you could take that money, the gap, and so we spent less than our budget on the record, so we kept that money. And so I think part of it was financial. I don't like the guitars are not as distorted as I liked. I think so. I like the coding stuff and the bitch magnet stuff that Mike McMacken had done. But then when we were actually recording, it didn't feel like, and also I had thrown my guitar at the time out into the audience at a Detroit radio.
Now, as a Radio Zero listener, I know this entire story, and it's a good one. But it's very long. So if there's a possibility for a truncated version of this, I'd like to hear it. But
well, no, I just threw my guitar away, and it was a guitar I actually bought in the town we live in now. And then I scrambled to get new guitars before recording the record. We also recorded in New York under the delusion that going somewhere far away is a good idea, right? So there's that mythical,
not a good idea,
romantic idea. This kind
We're
of is
gonna be
a
a
destination recording, is what
deserted island where nothing will affect us. We won't be able to have any outlet at all from the
so we
have to be more creative because there's going to be no other option. Yeah,
we weren't near our favorite guitar store, which was in your town. Still is Rock House still?
Rock House. It's a different location, but it's still rusty, still awesome.
So So when we were in Madison, we could go to Rock House, and then when we were in Champaign, going up to Chicago, half the band was in Chicago. We were rehearsing Chicago. We could go to Rock House and get guitars. All of a sudden, we're in the middle of New York, upstate New York, recording at this beautiful studio, but it just did not feel right. And
well, Mike wanted to record there, right?
Yeah, but I think we were into that idea of going somewhere to record. At least I was. I thought that was a good idea. And
try something new. We'd been Why?
And that's the other thing is just like people say, "Oh, well, why didn't you record with Steve?" And it's like because we already did record with Steve. It was
a bunch
always
of times, 2 records.
Yeah, we thought, well, we've got to make sure that how many records are we going to have? Vocally, the whole process of recording vocals, was a nightmare. I think, I honestly. I personally feel like I've never recovered from that experience. I think whatever I had early on as a singer, with Flower and Daisy Chain Reaction, I lost it. The recording tool of the man, and have not been able to regain it.
I mean, so the whole time, I feel like we talked about, like, Mike McMacken felt like he wasn't making a coding record or a bitch magnet record. Now, we chose him because we love those records, but I feel like he was making a major label record.
He was under a huge amount of pressure, too.
He didn't want to fuck it up.
It was our first major label release. It was his first major label release. And what I didn't understand is that his mindset would be different than ours, right? And so he was under a certain amount of pressure. He was under his preconceived notions of what it should sound like regarding a major label recording. I was under my preconceived notions, which were that we need to make sure to make this a record that sounds like we haven't changed, right? But
you don't want to make some glossy, unrepresentative, as many, we won't name any names, but as some bands were they put out records, you're like, is this the same band?
The reality, this is the dirty reality of major label careers, is that for the most part, the reaction you get from the label is complete indifference, and you're fighting for attention. And this is, I'm not even talking about, small fry band from Central Illinois. I'm talking about big bands that maybe haven't had a great record for a while. It's all indifference. And so what happens though is those bands make the jump, and then they think, I've got to make a record like that. Like I was talking about, it's like, and we didn't have any A&R pressure. It was not like, oh, you guys got to have a hit. There was nothing like that. It was like, be yourselves, do what you do, right? And so, which is what we wanted, but you can totally psych yourself out. I don't feel like I think that record is pretty contrarian. Actually, I think it might have been the opposite direction. I think we may have been. There's some slint damage. We're subsuming some of our more poppy instincts on that record.
Yeah.
And so we were going in the opposite direction in some ways, but it was also where we were going to. Music was changing, what we were listening to was changing, and we had a new drummer. And so it's very characteristic of who we are. I don't think it's an inaccurate document, but I think it doesn't sound like the record I want it to sound like.
Should we record it?
Ugh, too late now.
Okay, so and this is something where Johnny's with you for a while.
Year and a half. He stuck it out.
And talk to me about the touring around this time now. Playing out, touring.
Do you want to talk about that, Rose?
No, I don't remember it. What?
Well, I mean, once Tool of the Man came out, so it was insane, actually.
Oh,
around
is it
that time.
like the Failure Tour?
So at the end of 92, we had finished all of our touring. Was it the end of 92? Yeah. Bob was done with the band on that first big U.S. tour. The signing to the major label thing was about to happen. So Bob had quit the band in the middle of the tour, classic, and then he wanted back in, which I think he was just being mercurial, but I was like, there's no way this is just going to keep happening, right? If somebody can quit in the middle of a tour.
It sets a very poor precedent, to put it bluntly.
So basically, at the end of the year, it was like, we're getting all of this attention from all these labels. We don't have a drummer. We've got to find a new drummer.
Oh, so he called up Steve Albini and said...
Albini said, Johnny's the best drummer in town.
Yeah.
I think Precious Wax Drippings had just broken up. You should get him. And we tried him out, and he was great. And it was like, okay. And then it was like, got the call from Swerve Driver, or their booking agent. It was like, do you want to open for Swerve Driver? They want you to open. And we're like, sure. And that was, I think Johnny had been in the band 2 weeks before we went on that tour. And so we did that Swerve Driver tour. So that's 6 weeks. That was insane. That Swerve Driver tour was insane because they went through 3 drummers during that tour. So at least
So
when our drummer quit
during the tour,
right. He stayed in the band. He said, I'm done after the tour. So that's something to be said about Bob. Is at least he was like, I'm not. Yeah, he was like, I'm quitting.
Yeah,
but I'm going to play the whole tour.
The tour through. Yeah.
Whereas we saw front row seats to seeing Swerve Driver, and then all of a sudden, once we get into Canada, we hadn't seen them for 2 days, and all of a sudden, what's his name from Run Westy Run, which was another Minneapolis band that we had played with, was playing drums, sitting there with a Walkman playing drums. At the sound check, and it's like
practicing the songs.
Our drummer
with the
disappeared.
Walkman.
Yeah, our drummer disappeared, and so now he's here. And then what's his name? DC. I'm on friends with him on Facebook too. Showed up a few weeks later. Was
Canty? No.
See, I'm
I can't remember.
This is not because I don't remember. It's because I'm old.
Yeah, it's not because you don't remember.
Yeah. So then they got a permanent drummer for the rest of the tour.
What is his name?
It's terrible. Anyways.
It isn't a Brendan.
James Kennedy?
And then we did that insane tour. Then we wrote a bunch of songs, had the Detroit show, recorded the album, and then the album came out, and then I think we did the tour with the Screaming Trees. But the tour
where
supporting,
I was crying the whole time.
Yeah. The tour supporting
the female bass player.
The tour
so fucking mad. Sorry, go on.
The tour supporting. Oh, so that would have been the end of 92. I can't remember. Anyways, the tour supporting Tool of the Man. It was Screaming Trees, but then we did shows after that. I think we did 88 shows
in a year
straight.
Yeah,
no,
straight 88.
Something insane like 88 shows straight.
That's a lot.
Bro.
Did Johnny quit after that? I forgot.
And then Johnny quit. It was more complicated than that, but it was definitely
shows.
like.
But did we love it? Because I loved it. I loved it. All of this.
Okay, so
I know I cried a lot, but
yeah. So I just because there are people that listen to this show that aren't necessarily Radio Zero listeners, I do want to touch briefly about Mark Lanigan's book. And also former guest of the show. And
how dare you?
Yeah, and I just want to get something clear about this. There's some. First of all, he's pretty brutal in this book to almost everyone, but there was some miscommunication, misread things. It seems to me, but there was some trash talked. Specifically, in the fact that it seemed as if Rose that he thought that you called him like a Jim Morrison wannabe, if I remember correctly.
That idiot thinks he's Jim Morrison, the female bass player said.
I think he called you by name.
I'm going to look it up. I looked it up on Google Books, right? Yeah. He said so. First of all, I don't use the word idiot, and also I think
you're more of a moron person, right? You would have said moron.
That's. I would have said.
But yeah,
I would have said asshole or something.
Yeah.
And also when there's a band that's like a little older than us, like. I would have just been reverent. That's all I would have been.
Right, because you saw them not only as fellow travelers, but you also were kind of like, "Oh, this is great." You know, this is.
I didn't see them as fellow. Thing. No, I don't see people as fellow travelers. I see them as like mentors or people to be followed. And they had asked us to be on the tour, and I was so honored. This band is allowing us to be on the tour with us. And Rick, I know you felt the same way. We're just like anybody who asked us to be on a tour with them. And we said yes, we would have been very reverent to them, and like you hear me talk about listen to us talk about any band that's like a year older than us or something. We never trashed. Do we ever trash talk anybody? Not even that. I just remember.
I've tried to push you to actually trash talk Rick, and you've generally demurred, which I think is very class act of you, and certainly more than I do.
Very, very, very reverent to them. So he wrote something like, I said this idiot thinks he's Jim Morrison. The second thing, I don't use the word idiot usually unless somebody is physically. I don't use that word. That's not a word.
And you're not going to make a Doors reference because you're not.
I don't even know who the Doors are. They had this song from Apocalypse Now. I don't listen to that. I don't listen to. Is it the 70s? I don't listen to that.
60s. Yeah.
Whatever. I don't listen to it. If it's not it's like 1977 is where it starts for me, where music starts.
Yeah, he's not a reference point for you.
No, not at all.
Especially back in 1992.
Yeah, I wouldn't. Yeah, so he says that. I said that, and then he goes on this whole long thing about how terrible it is to be compared to the guy from the Doors. Which why would you not want to be compared to him anyways?
Because that guy sucks. I mean, Jim Morrison's terrible. Like it's and it's also a trope for a certain type of lead singer that's very self-involved, very like most of the. When you think of the tropes that are commonly associated with lead singers, you can actually trace quite a few of them to Jim Morrison. Like they're being precious, like not showing up for sound check, and like just elevating the self over the band, things along those lines. It's for a specific type of person that just sings. I could see where that would be almost maybe he might disagree with the term, but a triggering event to hear that. Whoever said it, I could see where he'd be like, "What?" Especially back then, where he was, maybe not
totally on drugs, all the time. And there was another thing too. Like, I don't care if he was on. He was really nice. I do remember that all of them were really, really nice. But it goes on in his book. He goes on to say that he was going to torture me by being extra nice to me. Which I'm rereading this again. I wish I had like some feminist, like information inside me, right? Where I could like look. I was really rereading it again, like through a different lens, and thinking that this is some really assholey writing, and it's terrible. It's like, so I was going to hurt her by being really nice to her. Like being extra nice. That would and like I'm trying to remember what else he wrote, but
the tour was. That's the thing is being able to tour with a band like the Screaming Trees. It was exactly what we wanted. We wanted to be able to play in front of a lot of people who liked.
I remember
kind of weirder music that rocks.
I remember the day that I got him to come into our dressing room. I was like, Mark Lanigan said he's going to come into our dressing room, and I was so excited. And he came to visit and stuff. So it really hurts me, man. I can't remember what I was going to say. What else?
Okay, well, yeah, and again, I don't want this, to necessarily go on too long with that, but I will say that I've invited Mark to be back on the show again, so we'll see if anything comes of that, and maybe we can get this sorted. Maybe I can be the go-between for this, which would make me very happy. So.
Yeah, call him right now. Call him. You have his phone.
No,
I do have his phone number, but I'm probably not going to do that right now. I think that would be a little weird. But okay, so to set the record straight, you didn't say any of that stuff. It sounds like the charitable way to say it would be a complete misunderstanding on his part and mischaracterization. Just to set the record straight.
Let's just say, from the viewpoint of a person who was there, he would be an unreliable narrator.
Gotcha. Sounds good. And that no more needs to be said there. I wanted to get that on record. I don't want to spend too much time on it because even though it's relevant in the recent news, I feel like there's a lot more to get to, and I want to make sure to get that. So I hope you guys are cool with that. And whether you're cool with it or not, that's what we're doing. So RTFM, talk to me about the junior citizen. Sorry. Well, Howie is where I was going to go with it. Is it like okay? Enter the Howie and then junior citizen. I was all flustered about Lanigan. Sorry, I didn't mean that.
Flustered about
Do you have questions?
It just makes me feel bad that I've hurt somebody.
You haven't,
unintentionally hurt somebody. And somebody who I really looked up to also.
Yeah,
okay,
you can't be responsible for other people's feelings, especially in that way.
I hope his book sells a lot.
Yeah. Goldmine Publishing.
Well, and I guess the one thing we didn't mention with Tool of the Man is that that's when your brother Jim comes in on guitar too.
Yeah.
So, real quick, just how did you enlist Jim into Posterchildren?
Well, things were kind of getting weird. I don't know how to say it without. Anytime I talk about it, I get into trouble. I mean, we threw Jeff out of the band. Things got weird. We tried going back to being a trio.
3-piece, yeah.
So we did the 3-piece thing for a few months, and it didn't work out. I felt like we needed another guitar player. Bob was really pro 3-piece. I remember that, and but. Again, that could have been an economic decision. Who knows? I start looking back and think,
hey, I mean,
factor
in.
Exactly. I mean, that is. I mean, you never know.
We were in the van once, and Bob goes, "Guys, let's get a dog. We should get a dog. That'd be so much fun to tour with a dog, wouldn't it? Let's get a dog." It was fun.
We tried him out. Had a few, I think, what was
Jim.
it? Tommy House?
Yeah.
What was the song we tried out?
Yeah. Tommy House. He had some good good riffs.
Yeah. So he's able to play and make up stuff
and
basically in rehearsal. And that's a requirement of the band, is because we write in rehearsal.
Right.
And
it's not something where there's like, here's the articulated demo and here's the parts you're playing. It's
And we're kind of wired, have similar musical backgrounds, obviously.
Yeah, I figured you wouldn't get into a fight with him because your mom would get, stop fighting.
Yeah. And so, he passed the audition, and he started playing. And then, so that was before Johnny. So by the time, so he was so Jim was already on
Tool the Man. And
so we had already Jeff had been in the band for a year. Yeah, boy, I can't even remember the timeline with that, but yeah, definitely. So so the first record that Jim's actually on the recordings of is Tool of the Man. Yeah.
So then, as I mentioned earlier, enter the Howie, and this is there's also the EP too, right? There's
the Just Like You EP,
right?
Yeah. So we had recorded 17 songs for Junior Citizen, and then the label did not want to release it in the fall, but we wanted to go on tour because we had been waiting to make the record and everything like that. And it was like, no, the record can't come out yet. It wasn't a delay. It was just more like, no, you can't. We can't put out a record in a couple months. That's the downside.
They just didn't want to do that.
They have everything had to be done because of press at the time and everything. They had
the cycle, as they
there's
say,
a pipeline, and a cycle, and so put out the extra songs we chose some songs to separate out into an EP, not a mini LP. And then, so that's what happened. So we recorded Junior Citizen all together and the Just Like You EP all together, and then just chopped it up into 2 pieces.
And that's Brian Anderson.
Yeah. And so that was the reference early on about garbage is while we were at Smart Studios. Yeah, that was the second time Butch Vig said he didn't want to record us. And so we wound up going to Smart and working with Brian. But yeah, Shirley Manson was sitting, this English lady was sitting in the, what is it called? The
downstairs studio, right?
Yeah, but also just in there was like a room and a kitchen, the lounge.
Yeah.
And I remember Howie and Jim talking to her a bit, and it was like, yeah, they just flew this woman in to try out to be a singer on these songs that Butch is working on with the other guys, other producers, who are part of, who became Garbage, right? And so that was the interesting thing about Junior Citizens. While we were recording that album at Smart, they were starting to develop. They had already recorded a lot of the instrumental tracks, and they were looking for a singer, and she was there to try out, and then wound up being in the band.
Did Kurt Cobain kill himself during this time too?
Yep, while we were at the studio, and people were ringing the studio doorbell, and it's like, there's Butch isn't here right now, and even if he was, he's not going to be able to help you out with Kurt dying, Yeah. That was weird.
People were pounding on the doors, on the studio doors, like reporters were trying to get in.
Just try to get a quote or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Heavy, which is interesting because, I think Junior Citizen's a relatively jubilant record in a lot of ways. Certainly, the title track is something of an anthem, both live and on the record. Also, it seemed to me like that's the first one that really had any elements of like electronicness to it. Also,
yeah. So Mel, our manager at the time, had been in. He had been Thin White Rope's manager, and then he and his partner had been in a. Now husband had been in a new wave band kind of in LA in the early 80s, and they had a drum machine and a synthesizer, which I have now and are worth a fortune now, but I bought from them for some ridiculous amount of money because nobody wanted them. And so, and then Rose had an old Juno 6 again, which I don't know what you got, how much you got it for, but it was just super cheap because nobody wanted that stuff. And then we hooked it all together, and we're playing around with that when we did Junior Citizen. Yeah.
So the song
that was my, the thing is that I was super into synths and new wave and 4-tracking, that kind of stuff before the whole SST thing and everything like that. I was super into synth pop and stuff like that. So it wasn't too far of a leap, and you can hear some of the new wave stuff in the early Flower Power stuff. There's still a lot of new wave in there. In fact, the guy from Codeine, I remember when they stayed at our house, he was like, I like that earlier new wave stuff on that first record.
What are you talking about? Which songs?
Like what is it, the non-reggae song? And
sure, yeah.
They're yeah. There's
maybe
more
even like an, I don't know, ecstasy kind of.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Oh, okay, all right.
Yeah, I'm not talking super.
Not like Human League.
No.
Okay, so Junior Citizen, it's in the cycle. You're out. You're playing. This is right about when the tour diaries go online. There's a digital world that's that's being created. If I remember correctly, Junior Citizen was one of the first enhanced CDs.
Was it Junior Citizen or RTFM?
RTFM. And Junior Citizen had a
no, it had a
floppy, a 3/4 inch,
right.
Those hard plastic ones that were still called floppies.
So there's the attendant bonus material that comes with it, of which that was something that was very unique. That is still very unique, frankly. So what, to me, it kind of seemed like, okay, this is just something fun that we can do that adds to the overall experience. What was the mindset behind including that? And the reason why I say that is because, you certainly didn't have to go to that effort to include that.
The way I remember this is that, people were starting to trade MP3s now. right? No, 1990.
Still,
Really? Well, okay. But the way I remember the electronic press kit stuff, or at least the enhanced CD stuff, which is what we call it, is I remember Howie Klein or Joe McEwen. Who was it? Howie Klein, right?
I think we were in L.A.
Okay, we were in LA. We were at the Warner Brothers Sire, and they said, we're starting to experiment with enhanced CDs now. Do you guys want to make one? And we were like, yeah, sure. And then they were like, well, good. You guys are computer programmers, so go do it.
And I remember it the other way, where it was like, we need to do an enhanced CD. Do you guys have people doing that? Because, and this would have been more our RTFM era. I don't know what made the junior citizen thing happen.
Yeah.
But regardless, yeah, I think initially we were under the expectation that we would get some help, or they had a team of people to do this stuff. And then we found out, oh, no, they don't have a team to do this. In fact,
oh, no, you're the team. Yeah.
Yeah. The people who wound up being the digital people were people who had maybe been, I think, had been a product manager, and then they had to do digital stuff, and they were calling Rose about HTML and trying to, get stuff going. So
see, and I don't remember that. What I remember is I remember just being challenged and being like, and him saying, you guys are computer programmers, right? And I remember going, yeah, of course we are. Yes, we know how to do that. And I remember saying, can I talk to your digital team just to make sure we're on the same page? We're using the same software as them. And I remember just going, what the hell? How would you do that?
Oh, yeah, let me get the digital team. Hello, digital team here.
I was programming 83, 86 assembler before that. We were programming. I don't even think maybe I programmed in C++ a little, but I was programming assembler. I didn't know how to put a picture on a screen.
But I remember we FTP'd the Tool of the Man artwork to the label, and they said this is the first time someone external from the company
FTP
has uploaded anything. So we were already operating on a level that, since we were doing graphic design stuff,
I do remember
digitally,
them asking.
Higher technological engagement, more.
Yeah.
So wait, I would have had the HTML before. We would have been doing tour. So I was doing tour reports before I made the enhanced CD.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, RTFM is the enhanced CD. The junior citizen thing, that would have been, still was Macromedia Director.
Macromedia, Macromedia. I could not think of Macromedia at all, which I don't know why I would be thinking of Macromedia in 2020.
And before that, you had done a HyperCard thing for somebody. I totally forgot about that. I mean, you'd done HyperCard work. So, I mean, there's
I didn't know
weird
what I was doing with the HyperCard. Oh, I
was going to send it to you. Somebody had done something just recently. There's a HyperCard emulator, and
it was a program though. It wasn't like HyperCard was good because you could actually do multimedia.
Yeah, it had hypertext and everything. But it was not a big leap.
The first time I heard the word hypertext was the bass player from the Six Finger Satellite.
Maybe.
Who was it? Yeah, was it the bass player?
I don't know.
Okay. Well, it was explained to me what hypertext was. So Six Finger Satellite.
I just remember my dad on the phone and saying, "You've got to see this thing. It's on the computer. It has pictures. You can go look at this museum's." I don't think he said website. I don't know how he explained it, but he was like, "You have to see this thing." And we just got this demo of this thing. It was because he worked at a research laboratory, and it was like they were on the internet already, and so he had seen an early web page. I can't remember, was it they had put up some paintings from the Louvre or something.
So
So we were lucky enough to have these early exposure to this stuff.
I was terrified the whole time that I was making this, because I don't know, like, I can program anything, but the content, I had no idea what to do. And I remember you saying, well, it's got to be different. And I was like, well, what? Just tell me. What should I do? It was, that's not good. Tell me,
So the Residents had an enhanced CD. This would be
was that Bad Day at the Midway, or was that? No, that was okay.
But they had collaborated with a multimedia, company and everything like that, right?
Right. They weren't programming it themselves,
right? And so for us, it was like, okay, we got to learn how to do this. We're not going to partner with the team. We're going to have to learn how to do this ourselves, and that kind of carried through. Like when we made the DVD, actually, I remember there was an announcement that some Mac was going to come out with a DVD burner in it in like 6 months. And it was like, okay, now we can make a DVD, do a master, because before then it was super complicated. It was just like in the old days with CDs. Before you could afford a CD burner, you couldn't. The CDs were $100 each, like the writable ones, and the machine to write them was $4,000, and it was like
it was not easy media to.
You had to go to a place and get all this stuff done, and it cost a huge amount of money. And it was all of a sudden, oh no, we're going to be able to afford this in 6 months, so we better start working on this project now. And so that was. I think we were always looking a little farther ahead, but we also didn't understand, I think, how ahead we were. Mm-hmm. We was always like, oh.
Yeah, so that's what I was saying. Was it sort of, to you guys, was it like, oh, this is just water? You know, we're like, you're not thinking about it at the time, but like there weren't a lot of bands doing this, really.
Yeah.
And when they were, as you mentioned, it was something like The Residents, where it's like they partnered up with someone and they did it rather than taking DIY. Not just to we'll make the art, we'll make the flyers, we'll make the T-shirts. Like, no, we'll program the enhanced media.
Yeah.
And that was the big thing with the A&R guy at Sire, is like, because he also signed Aphex Twin to Sire, and he was like, why don't you guys are computer people? Why isn't your music more electronic? Why aren't you more like this? It doesn't make sense. You know, the more he got into, electronic music, and it was like, and now looking back, I realized, well, we didn't see it as, a craft work thing. We saw it as, oh, we lived in this indie environment, but you used to have to mail out letters and fanzines, and you used to do all this physical stuff, and you had to call people on the phone. And it was like all this stuff. Or if you wanted to put out music, you had to, you had to call up a pressing plant and have money to do all that. And for us, it was just seeing how the technology, it was like, oh, this is all going to make all that stuff infinitely easier and infinitely more direct. And so our relationship to technology wasn't from necessarily a musical standpoint. It was from a community standpoint, which was like, oh, everything we do to communicate to our fans and how they communicate with us is going to get easier and easier because of this technology. And
it was another tool in the toolbox to achieve that goal.
We were just in the right place at the right time. We were computer science majors. We lived in a town where where Mosaic, which became Netscape, was developed, and there was a free net where, it was one of the few free nets outside of, some place like the Bay Area, right? That you could, get access to the internet. And host web pages.
Yeah, and host and like access Usenet from.
And gigs to do programming stuff. So the HyperCard gig, and then probably doing, stuff with Macromedia Director. It was also, there were people who needed that kind of stuff done.
Just real quick, for the record, Freak Show was first, not Bad Day at the Midway. I was corrected by Carlin Reed in the chat box.
That's Freak.
Which I don't know why I have them twisted up. I knew that, but it makes sense that Carlin Reed would be the one that would have the Residents correction. Let's just put it that way.
And I have my copy of it in the basement, and I have it, and I've been meaning to put it up for sale. That along with the David Bowie enhanced.
Oh yeah,
seat.
Yeah. One thing I remember about all the like kind of doing research on the enhanced CDs that were already out was just just trying to make sure that like you couldn't visit it all in one sitting. I didn't want it to be static and boring.
You wanted it to be an experience that people could.
I wanted to put so much stuff in it that it would be worth returning to, because it's
value
still
added, as they say.
Yeah.
So, okay, then you got Junior Citizen. That's the last one for Sire. Then there's the Pathway to RTFM, which is...
Well, Sire, I guess it wasn't on Sire, right? It was on Reprise. It was the same people, though.
Yeah.
Same folks, but...
I'm trying to remember what was going on with Sire at that time. I think they sold it or they moved. So... we stayed on the major label for RTFM, but it doesn't have the Sire name on it.
Yeah, we could have gone to Reprise or Warner, right? Or something like that.
It's some superficial
weirdness. And we chose to go to Reprise?
Yeah, because of how it climbed.
Live Corporation, so... I mean, it's hard to adequately explain this day and age that at one point that kind of stuff mattered. there was cultures behind each one, and like it was like, oh, that's the record label that does this.
Well, that was the thing. It was the end of the Warner Brothers culture. So, what's his name? Mo Austin and Lenny Waronker had left Warner Brothers, and so they had basically built that whole Reprise Warner mystique of not mystique, like actual like artist supported. So the reason why Neil Young was always on Reprise, except for the short time he left and went to Geffen and then got sued for playing, not making Neil Young music, right?
Yeah.
Is they had built a friendly environment, but that era was ending because you couldn't afford that anymore. And so if you've seen the Wilco documentary, RTFM was around the same time as all that stuff was happening with Wilco. Our record came out, and then instead of, fighting it, but it was basically once Howie Klein left Reprise and all of our alternative marketing people had moved up into the company because they wanted to move on to higher level jobs. And then I think they all got fired, right? There was no alternative marketing department anymore. And because they didn't want to market alternatively anymore either. And so that was kind of the end of everything. So yeah, watch the Wilco documentary to see what the mentality was then. It was just basically like, we can't have any bands, even if a band sells 100,000 records, which sounds like it. Well, now it sounds like
now
an
it's a
insane
lot.
Yeah, but at that time, it was like that's a joke. We there's no reason to spend money on that, right? Which was what Wilco was, right? It's like doesn't matter that Wilco's considered the best band of the band of the year. It's like they're not.
Doesn't matter at all. I mean, and then to look how things have changed since then too. If I remember correctly, it was either Senile Animal or Bride Scream Murder. Melvin's record ended up on the Billboard charts, and like it is because they had sold something like 15,000 copies. Right. Just to show how times have changed.
Yeah.
Okay, so RTFM, which is, if I remember correctly, that's the last one that you recorded in a studio, like because New World Record is when Tedium started.
Yeah, in
correct?
the house.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh, we recorded the new record.
That's a studio. Oh, and we recorded the new record.
An external studio, I should say. Yeah. It's
the last record we Grand Bargain we recorded at Steve's studio.
Oh, sure. Well, from this era, from this era, I'm speaking of because ideally we will actually be able to get to talk about Grand Bargain, but we got to kind of pick up the pace a little bit here. So RTFM, which has the actual enhanced CD. Again, you're providing more. I really want to use another term, but content for the fans.
Content.
And again, as a young man, like picking it up, I'm like, wow, I can't believe they have like this crazy cartoon video game thing. This is awesome. Like it blew my mind that it could exist, and then it blew my mind even further to find out that this is coming from the people within the band. So around that time, is that when you go to Europe with Steel Pole Bathtub, somewhere in that neighborhood?
Probably.
Oh yeah, me and Mike, we would sit, on a couch and both be programming. I remember that. You were too, right?
I don't think I was.
We'd be sitting and programming, and then I think
this whole Mark Lanigan standoffish thing makes me realize that I spent a huge amount of that tour in my bunk. I just don't did. Really don't like.
He's so standoffish.
It's
Rick.
not standoffish. It was just overwhelming. Like to be in a bus. 14. How many people were on that bus?
Everybody
14.
was on the bus.
I mean, it's close quarters when you're in a van with the rest of your band, but let alone to have like another band and crew and
Austrians.
I enjoyed it. That was fun. They were really nice.
No,
Steel Pole Bathtub was so nice to us. Except for that idiot who thought he was Jim Morrison. Mike Moraski.
That's funny.
So that's a nice experience. That's you obviously get to go. Get to go to Europe. Yeah.
We got. Do you remember how that happened? We played. Well, who did we play with? Like Faith No More and Steel Pole Bathtub or something. That was the
radio
show.
That was the show.
That was the show where we tried to walk to the front of the stage and we didn't. And the guy said, "I'm sure of it."
No. That was much later. That was
it was terrible. We drove like 4,000 hours to play a show, and then we had to get back for somebody's wedding, right? Wasn't somebody getting married?
Andy's wedding,
yeah. Andy's wedding. We drove all the way to Cincinnati, Ohio, which is very far. Was it Cincinnati?
I felt like that was Detroit too.
All right,
God, I don't know.
Yeah, so you're conflating them. So and then we played, and it was terrible. But we met Steel Pole Bathtub, and they were very nice, and we came home. And then later on, they called us up, and they said, hey, I think they were going to tour with some other band, and that band dropped out. So they said, can you come with us to Europe in 2 weeks? And we were like, yeah,
So-
sure, okay. It was awesome. I liked it.
Oh yeah, I love the tour.
It was like 3 or 4 weeks.
I have fond memories of it, but I also remember being in my bunk a lot too.
Yeah.
So the RTFM record, any quick experiences with the recording and everything?
We recorded that in Champaign at Pogo Studios, which was our local studio.
Yeah, close to us.
Yeah, so that was good. We were back to normal.
The basement was the basement was filled. I think Mark Rubel was a hoarder, and it was like a block full of just amazing stuff. So we went and we videotaped in there, and some of that's inside the RTFM enhanced CD.
The enhanced media, yeah.
I tell you, man. So in order to burn an enhanced CD and send it to the record label, there were 2 sets.
Because it wouldn't even read in every CD player, right?
My God, there was so many. We used the Orange Book format, I think. I had to do all this research on all that stuff. I can't believe that. I did all that. But anyway.
It was a good side gig, though, for a while, making enhanced CDs for indie labels. We did a lot of that.
Thrill Jockey, we made some enhanced CDs for Thrill Jockey. And it was all those guys would just throw a couple of videos on it.
Yeah. Wouldn't be
to
as...
us.
Wouldn't be as full poster children as the poster children stuff.
No.
So then, moving forward to New World Record. This is the first one you do in TDM. And... it's for spin art, right? This is the end of an epoch, a epoch of time.
Do you have a question?
So no, sorry, the light went out there. So you know how to make records. You've made a bunch of records. At this point, this is your 6th, 7th maybe record, something along those lines. So is the idea to record, to build a studio and to have the ability to kind of record whenever you want. Again, coming from that idea towards pushing things towards sustainability, what prompts this decision? What was that process?
Yeah, so we had bought a house. So it must have been on that Steel Pole Bathtub tour that right before that tour, we bought a house and then left on tour and came home, and our house was filled with boxes. I remember that. Do you remember that?
No.
I remember
Maybe.
basically buying a house in Champaign and then not being able to move in because we had to go to Europe for 6 weeks. That was a little frightening as a new homeowner. And then, then I built a studio during Planet of the Apes week in the basement of the house. I remember that. I watched... I can't remember what channel did Planet of the Apes week, and it was hosted by Roddy McDowell. And so every night he'd show another Planet of the Apes movie, and I'd be building, the structure for this 2-room studio in the basement. It was more about a rehearsal space, but also to record. Yeah. And so, and then I think the first thing we did there was, we rehearsed in there a lot. So it was our rehearsal space because we'd moved into a house. And then we recorded the Salaryman record there, and it was that record people liked, and kind of figured, if we can make a Salaryman record, why can't we do a Poster Children record? And so it just went from there.
And I feel like we need a parallel show to get into all the Salaryman stuff. But basically, this is your Kraftwerk Devo style synth-related side band. Not even side project, but another band that kind of existed in parallel at the time.
Yeah.
I remember Ian Mackay saying, "Don't go electronic on me."
It was different, though. We played our synth through amps and stuff, so there was a little...
And we had a real drummer.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was like Trans Am, something along those lines for people that need a corollary for things. And it comes from synthy stuff played in a rock context.
Yeah.
We were big in Europe. True.
All right, so then New World Record begets DDD.
So the plan was to put out a record every year. I wanted to put out 5 records in 5 years to counter the 2-year cycle. Once we had our studio and an indie label, they wanted to put out our records, and then
And that stands for those that have made records, they would probably know this, but it used to be, there was a code for it, I forget what it's called, but it would be like, it's digitally recorded, digitally mixed, digitally mastered, DDD.
Right.
Which at a time when used to be, it's ADD, it's AAD,
Yeah.
These different parts of the process would be how it would be coded.
Yeah. And so it was recorded digitally, and it was, I don't know. Again, it was the technology thing. It was the empowerment thing. So not being able to afford analog recording.
Code. It's called sparse code.
Sparse code. Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Conan.
And then,
again.
Yeah, and so the affordability of digital recording, and so that was what was going on too, is that we were able to build a studio digitally based. I just recently listened back to some of that stuff. I definitely feel the need to remix it, but still, it meant that we were able to make records without having to pay for them, pay anyone for them, right? It was basically, how are we going to be able to do all this ourselves? And so that's what it was.
And again, and I once again an eye towards sustainability and being able to do the thing and move things forward.
Longevity. I wrote that down.
Yeah,
that's the word I was looking for.
All right, so then there's the record of year thing didn't really happen.
No, I don't know what happened. Howie quit.
You get a job?
I got a job. Howie quit.
Did we have a baby? No.
We did not have the baby yet. Yeah, and so we got a new drummer, which was Matt. Yeah, a lot of stuff happened. 9/11 happened. Yeah, so I had a job for a year, and then I didn't again. Yeah, so a lot happened after DDD.
I was teaching Taekwondo. Yeah. I was doing lots of martial arts at that time.
And then that leads to No More Songs About Sleep and Fire. Yeah, a few years later. That's I think that one's got an enhanced CD-ROM too, right? If I remember correctly, that's
It just had a commentary track, so we recorded ourselves.
That's right. Yeah.
Talking about the record all the way through as we listened to.
One of them there were two enhanced CDs, though. Another one of them had.
New World Record had enhanced CD stuff. I forgot about that.
Yeah. I think I had,
of course. I don't know where those CDs are, so I haven't seen them in a long time. I'm sorry.
It has a bug in it. There's a bug in it? There is a bug in it. I was checking it to make sure that what would happen if you, something about never winning or something like that. I had some kind of a variable that, I could make so that you could never win the game. And I forgot to flip it back before when I compiled it. Yeah. I need to get a computer to run that stuff. See what.
Yeah. I've popped those in once in a while.
Doesn't run under Mac OS.
To get because that was all OS 9. So
all this stuff has been collected by the Sousa Archives and the Center for American Music. So, I think that can be accessed through the web, probably, right? They collected everything we have. So we had
but
boxes.
You can't directly. It's not digitized.
Well, it could be, though. We should ask them to digitize it at some point.
Any questions about the last 5 records we did?
Yeah, well, plenty, but we're almost completely out of time. So
derailed.
Yeah, it's fine. So No More Songs About Sleep and Fire. Then there's a pretty big gap. There's a lot of life that happens. There's kids. There's Rival Dickens, Thought Detecting Machines. There's the whole world that happens. But I guess my greater point with this is the world of playing music and being poster children sort of changes for a pretty large amount of time. And coming at it from the perspective of having done all these other things, being a band for a living, you've been in the indie gold rush, et cetera, the lessons that you learn from being a band and doing all this stuff and applying it to music and then continuing to make music and, quite frankly, a pretty awesome raucous record, which is, I think, Grand Bargain is relatively underrated in the pantheon. What's the overall takeaway for creativity in the year 2020?
That sounds like a hard question.
You can think about it.
I mean, that's the problem. I mean, the Posterchildren is a live band. I mean, I've come to terms with that. I've never been completely happy with our recorded output. Daisy Chain Reaction is pretty good. I'm not the person to ask. It's hard to think about the band without a live component. And to me, the records, I like making records. I don't know if the rest of the band really likes it that much.
Okay, so I mean, you're continuing your musical career as Thoughts Detecting Machine, but we also have this. I mean, I feel like there's one of the big things for me in Posterchildren was to, like the dissemination of energy. I don't know a better way to put it. No. Like how to empower people or to get people to think. To get people to feel like they can do stuff, or come on, if we can do this, if we can create, you can create too, and to teach people and to sort of connect people. And so with your lyrics, you're kind of teaching, you're pontificating to people and stuff like that. And so now we're teachers. I'm happy that we're professors and we're able to teach people all the time. And I'm teaching music business. Rick teaches music business sometimes for me also. We're teaching computer programming. We're teaching communication with digital technology, right? But also we have our podcasts, and so we're still able to create. I feel like with the podcast, it's kind of the same energy that we had and the same thing going on that we had in the van. What's missing is we're not reading as many books, I think, and having as many different wild experiences as we used to before we had kids and before we were trapped in this house, the quarantine, maybe. But maybe I've forgotten that, and it was kind of dumb back then too, But I feel like that's where our creativity is right now. I mean, that's another thread, at least of our creativity.
Yeah. I think I'm a little different than you. I like the creative part of it, or actually creating music. Yeah. So, I mean, there was some downtime in there. I don't know, 2007. Yeah.
And I don't feel too bad about skipping that because since I've had both of you on the show, we've gotten a little bit into some of that. I would like to explore that more in the future, but yeah. But I tried short shrift to recent memories.
Yeah, no, but I tried to stop doing this kind of stuff and writing songs and playing music and recording music, and it didn't work. So it's something I do. Yeah, and so for me, it's almost, it's not resignation. It's just kind of an acceptance that it's part of my life, and it's something I do. And it never started out as something that was going to be a career or defining part of my life. And so, but it is not a career, but well, I guess it was or is kind of, but it's a defining part of my life, and it's something I do to make myself. And again, this. It doesn't necessarily make me happy all the time. It does. It never makes a lot of.
I don't know what part of it makes you happy. Well, see, okay, so whereas you love the creative part of it, I love the performative part of it. And so I'm continuing. I think that's what capoeira is to me, or martial arts, taekwondo and stuff like that. But especially capoeira is performance, fighting with music. And so I think that's why I keep practicing that. And like you, it doesn't give me a lot of pleasure. It's a struggle all the time. It's horrible.
But to me, that's reality. I mean, there is a lot of messaging in the world, and I see this in our students sometimes. It's like, if it's not fun, if it's not giving you joy right at this moment, it's not good. And it's like, no, even the things that, it's like, oh, I got to play music and I got to play music for a living, but did that mean that I was the happiest person on earth? No, I was pretty happy, but it was like, there was lots of, it's a pain in the ass also. It's like, there's nothing that's 100% fulfilling, right?
Life is suffering.
Yeah, so I don't know.
But suffering like, like resistance, not suffering. Like the good kind of suffering.
Endurance. Rick, Rose, thanks so much for spending so much time with me and going through stuff. And technically speaking, we did get through it all. So I appreciate you.
It's pretty impressive.
Thanks so much. And just keep on keeping on. And can't wait for the next
Vote.
Radio Zero. Yes, and always vote.
Yeah. And thanks for your constant support, Conan.
My goodness, yes. Thank you, Conan. Yeah.
All right.
With the signal loud and 70% of the going rate. In the land of the free market and the home of the wage slave, it's not the robots you need to worry about, it's the corporate human. Teachers to leech, to sell, to buy. The business of America is business. This is a company town, a 21st century Pullman. 16 tons or 64 bits, it's all the same. Kleptocracy, ruled by thieves, to use the mechanism of government to enrich oneself at the expense of the greater good. The $6 billion man will be our savior. Greed is God, starve the beast, deregulate. Let's see if that puts food on your plates.
That was 2000, it was Marshack. Sour. These were, I do all those things. Yeah, then there was something called Protonic Reversal. So there's a radionuke.com thing. When you become controversial, Reversal is not. Look, because of for controversial. Controversial. Thank you everyone for all the nice words, for all the episodes. Really appreciate it. Hopefully that's not
You haven't got it, Doctor. You were the last man on Earth. Sure, prepare to prove it. This one goes out to a special girl. See the radio. The last announcer plays the last record. The last walk leaves the transmitter. The glow returns to the listener. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Really broadcast